Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 293 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is Start Paying Yourself First. Our quote of the day comes to us from Jack LaLanne. Invest in yourself now and reap the dividends day, after month, after year. If you have not yet grabbed a copy of our new book, The Positivity Tribe, yet, please do so and join our Positivity Tribe. You can head on over to Amazon or anywhere else books are sold. I really enjoyed speaking with today's guest. In addition to holding the title of the World's Strongest Bodybuilder, Stan Efferding absolutely brings it. He shares some really great stuff with us, and I hope you enjoy today's episode. Stan, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you having me.
I appreciate it. So the first question I ask everybody is, are you ready to positively impact at least one person today?
Man, I hope so. I love doing this. It's been so enjoyable for me.
So the number and objective of our show is to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. I was curious if you yourself either have a no-quit story or perhaps a challenging time personally or professionally where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Yeah, I actually did a YouTube rant that I'd really encourage everyone to watch. I've gotten enormous feedback on it. It's called Stress for Success. And there were a number of times in my life when I started running a business and when I started my own business on two occasions where I just worked myself into a hole. Anxiety, depression, poor health, sleeping 4 hours a night, eating dollar meals for breakfast and lunch at McDonald's. And hard to believe someone who's competed for 30 years actually endured that kind of thing over a short period of time. And I found that my health suffered, my performance suffered, my job and business was suffering. And the rant itself just speaks about the fact that I happened upon a book at a Barnes & Noble at the time called Stress for Success by Jim Lohr. It's been some, 15, 20 years ago, it seems now. And I sat down and read the book, and the entire thing was about sleeping better, not eating like an asshole, and exercising regularly. And it just a light bulb went off in me from somebody who'd been competing since 1986 and so incredibly disciplined, on a clock for every meal, in bed by 10 every night, training, tracking everything, sets and reps and meals and calories and all that stuff. I had let all of that go, thinking that the extra hours and all the extra stress I was taking on was going to help my business. And in fact, it did just the opposite. And so I tell you, at the time, I just started paying myself first. I started sleeping better. I started exercising regularly, just taking walks frequently throughout the day. I quit eating at McDonald's and tightened up my diet like I used to, and made some plans and meal prepped and was more disciplined about it. And things took a 180-degree turn. And not to boast, but that business blossomed into a $25 million a year company with 100 employees in 20 states. From at the time, it was almost a failure. I was $150,000 in debt with 10 credit cards maxed out and a loan from my parents, and living in a little 3-bedroom apartment with 3 roommates. And it just all turned around for me. And, some of that may have been luck, sure, but most of it, I think, was because I just started taking care of myself and everything else improved. So that's certainly been, and I did it twice. I did it once for someone else. I was vice president of a telecommunications company, sleeping 4 hours a night, working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, and turned that into a very successful business at my expense. And then I started my own company a couple of years later and did it again to myself. And so both times it paid dividends for me to just start doing the fundamental things better.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that story is very similar to many people's story where you get knocked down and you go away from those disciplines that got you to the level of success you had in powerlifting and bodybuilding. But I think the best part about No Quit Living and our No Quit tribe is it's the comeback. It's everybody loves that Rocky story. Everybody loves what people did to get them to the next level. And you said something that was interesting. It's a book, and so many of our guests have shared a specific book or a video that really impacted them. So I'm going to ask you if there's anything that you've read recently, or perhaps you're reading anything currently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
Selfishly speaking, I have to tell you, the book that I wrote, The Vertical Diet 3.0, is that exact same thing. It's about how to apply those fundamentals, how to get better sleep, how to coordinate the logistics of life, to meal prep and to travel, and all the things I handle for my clients. And so I've read a lot of stuff that's been really helpful, and I've incorporated it into my book. Some of the key people, because I'm in the fitness industry now full time, some of the key people that I listen to that provide me really great information, a lot of it's academic, is probably Greg Nuckols from Mass Research Review, and Alan Aragon has his own newsletter on nutrition that's fantastic, and the folks at Barbell Medicine, Jordan Fagenbaum and Austin Baraki. It's just really solid information that anybody can use to improve certainly their health and fitness. And outside of that, I've just endeavored to do everything I can to help people with compliance. I trademarked the term "compliance is the science," and I spend most of my time talking to people about how they can do the simple things, such as optimize sleep, and such as improve their digestion, and getting a blood test, and controlling blood pressure and blood sugars, and using a thermos to travel with meals for you and your kids. And I mean, the list goes on and on. So I don't mean to drivel, but that's so important to me, is to have a daily tracking schedule. I mean, I haven't even competed in 7 years, and I still have a spreadsheet that has the days of the month across the top, and it has a list along the left of all the things that I need to do every day to make sure I can perform at a very high level. It's not necessarily a to-do list, for your daily tasks, or a scheduler like you would put on your calendar, but it's the things that, I write down my hours of sleep. I write down whether or not I got my walks. I write down whether I took my vitamin D3, or those kinds of things that I think are essential for me to even be able to perform at a high level consistently.
I want to digest that for a second. I appreciate you going into depth with what you track. And when you mention optimize sleep, it's something that I know, not just for our listeners that are entrepreneurs, but for our listeners that are just regular, average people, mothers and fathers. And it's something that I personally have tried to study for the last few months. But if I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind just briefly touching on the importance of sleep, not only professionally, but also for your well-being.
Oh, absolutely. It's huge. There's nothing more important. I would encourage everyone to jump onto YouTube and listen to Dr. Matthew Walker. He was on Joe Rogan. He spent his whole career working on sleep. And I've worked personally with Dr. Stasha Gomenak, who is a 30-year MD neurologist who discovered late in her career that sleep optimization had the most success in resolving things like fibromyalgia and migraines and all those things she used to medicate people for. I use it with all of my clients to manage things like blood pressure. Do you know that if you have sleep apnea or are getting short on sleep, you can elevate your systolic blood pressure by up to 20 points? You could pound down a gallon of frickin' salt and probably not elevate your blood pressure by but 2 to 5 points. So that gives you an idea of how significant it is. It's significant for blood sugars. And within one day, the co-author of my book is a registered dietitian and a PhD in exercise phys. His master's thesis was on IGF-1 and insulin signaling. And he found a negative result after just one night of short sleep. So it's critical. I can't stress it enough. I think people know that, though. And what I try and focus on in my book is good sleep hygiene. And this is just a matter of personal responsibility. I can't stress enough. I can tell somebody exactly what to do, but if they don't do it, it's just ink on the paper. And so here's a list of the most important things, and I talk about these to all my clients. probably number one, wake up at the same time every morning and get exposed to light. That actually sets your circadian rhythm so that it's easier for you to get to bed at night. That starts in the morning and should be consistent, same time every day, even on the weekends. Secondly, would be managing the environment for your sleep. A dark room, blackout blinds would be ideal. A quiet room, if you have to wear headphones because you work nights and sleep days and the neighbor's running the lawnmower. A cool room, 69, 68, 67. Maybe even getting an Uller pad on the bed if your wife likes it warmer and you like it colder. You can divide the temperature, something like that. Blue light. Too many people watch TV up until the evening, or they sit on their iPhone. That's a killer. It prevents your circadian rhythms from helping you go to sleep, your melatonin release. And so you end up not getting to sleep as well. Here's a monster for a lot of people, and that is if you snore and wake up tired, you may have some degree of sleep apnea, and that can cause a whole host of side effects. And so get a CPAP. And if you don't have a doctor or can't afford a sleep study, they are quite expensive, usually $1,500. Plus, when you get CPAPs from doctors, they can be as much as another $1,500 or $2,000. And I say this much to the chagrin of the medical community, but I believe it's important enough, and I don't think that there's a significant downside. You can go on to Craigslist or even Walmart.com and order a Dream Station. The Dream Station's the latest and greatest. It's an auto PAP. It self-regulates. It gives you the pressure that you need. That's the machine that they hooked me up to the last time I went for a sleep study just a year and a half ago. I'm a bit of a hypochondriac. I do this for a living. I've had over 150 blood tests. I've had about half a dozen sleep studies since 1993. I've had a CAC scan, and you name it, I've had it, a CIMT. I do all of these things because I recommend them and I like to have experience in it. But with respect to the CPAP, the Dream Station is something that you could buy off the internet, watch a YouTube video as to how to set it up, and be up and running that evening. And I'm telling you what, I don't say this about a lot of things. I've been in this industry for 30 years and I'm cautious, but this is life-changing. You'll wake up the next morning, assuming that you can manage the mask. Sometimes that takes a few days or a week to get comfortable with it, but your life will change. You'll be up, cleaning the gutters and mowing the lawn and washing your car and painting the house. And I've been through it. I've lived it. And I'm telling you, that's the number 2 piece of feedback I get from people all over the world. I've received over 50,000 DMs on my Instagram from people all over the world over the last 2 years. And the CPAP is probably the second biggest impact that people give me feedback on that say that changed their life. And you don't have to be a fat guy to need a CPAP. Jordan Fagenbaum from Barbell Medicine weighs 198 pounds. He's quite lean, but he wears a CPAP because he has a crowded airway. Muscle can do the same thing. It's just a matter of your neck girth and crowding of the airway. So if you snore and wake up tired, it's a good consideration that you might need a CPAP. So that's probably my biggest piece of advice on sleep.
So I got to ask you, if the CPAP is number 2, what's the number 1 thing you've received the most DMs about?
I appreciate you asking. Number 1 is salt. And I'll tell you for a number of reasons. A lot of people who go on a diet, they stop eating at fast food places and they stop eating packaged food. And I think that's great. But when they do that, they dramatically decrease their sodium intake. And sodium is important for a lot of things. It can increase performance, endurance, stamina, sodium chloride, hydrochloric acid. It's good for digestion. I see a lot of people resolve symptoms of IBS and IBD simply from increasing sodium intake. I see people who go exercise and they stand up from a seated position, maybe your mom, your grandmother at home, or somebody using a leg press at the gym, and they get dizzy. And that's simply a matter of low sodium. And I know that the medical community, particularly the American Heart Association, is recommending the DASH diet at 1.5 grams of sodium a day. In fact, that's too little. The largest study, most comprehensive, 22 countries, 150,000 people using urinary excretion to measure sodium output is the PURE study. And it was run by the World Heart Federation, Dr. Salim Youssef out of Canada, who's a cardiologist. And he's discussed at length, and the literature is there, showing that anything under 3 grams of sodium a day can actually increase all-cause mortality significantly, more so than an excess of sodium in salt-sensitive, hypertensive people. So having said that, I think there's a safe range between 3 to 6 grams a day that people should be consuming. I don't think they should over-restrict. It really helps with things like headaches, insomnia, even brain fog, dizziness, as mentioned. All of those things can really be helped, particularly in the summertime, in the humidity, or if you're exercising. I think that salt has been critical. The recommendation for taking salt in is this, and it comes from a combination of sources: Dr. D. Nicolantonio, author of The Salt Fix; Dr. Sandra Godek, head of the a PhD and head of the Heat Institute. She's a specialist in thermoregulation and hydration. And here's what they recommend. They recommend salting your meals to taste. Your tongue will tell you. It's a negative feedback loop. It's not like sugar. You won't keep adding more and more and more. Have a salt shaker at the table. Salt your meals to taste. Remember, that's because we're not eating fast food. We're not eating packaged food. We're not downing cans of Pringles. And so we do need to put some salt on there. Our body needs it to perform. Between sodium and potassium, that's how you regulate water. That's how you create the signals for the nervous system, how muscle contracts and relaxes. All of those things are important with a good balance of sodium and potassium. Secondarily, after salting meals to taste, the ISSN and the NSCA both recommend taking 500 milligrams of sodium before and after exercise. That's a quarter teaspoon of salt, not a significant amount, but it makes a large difference in your performance, your energy, your stamina, your endurance. You'll feel much, much better when you're exercising, and you'll recover better with the sodium afterwards. I hate the taste of salt on my tongue and washing it down with water. So in my book, I recommend thermotabs or sodium chloride tablets. You can get them on Amazon. I don't make any money mentioning this. And I just pop a couple of those tablets to get about 500 milligrams of sodium before and after training. And that's the number one piece of feedback I get from people all over the world. I'm kind of known as the salt guy, the vertical diet. And I got to tell you, initially when I talked about this a few years back on a video, the medical community just eviscerated me. They were all over the internet telling me I was going to kill people, blah, blah, blah. But now the science is pretty clear, and a lot of those same medical professionals are now recommending the exact same thing and referencing the exact same research from D. Nicolantonio and Dr. Godek. I even went to a medical seminar last year, and they had the same references to the ISSN and the same recommendations. And these were people who previously had been, critical of my recommendations. And I think mostly because they conflated my recommendations for active individuals eating healthy with, elderly, overweight, hypertensive, sedentary individual who was eating crappy food. So there is a distinction.
No, I appreciate you touching on that. And I think it's really interesting. That's the salt and the sleep and the importance of it. And to your point, it's doing the research and understanding it. An interesting question we ask each guest is, if you had to define yourself, but you could only use one word, what word would you pick?
OCD. And I think it's been the reason for my success. I'm a bit type A. I'm obsessive. I told you about all my blood testing and my, just my, I guess, what would you call it? Hypochondria, which has kind of helped me stay healthy and make the recommendations I make. It's what's helped me be successful in business. I repeat successful behaviors on a daily basis. I have a checklist. I do the same thing in business. I've built 5 multi-million-dollar companies in the last 17 years. And I've done it by obsessing about repeating successful behaviors every single day. I'm not particularly genius in any specific pursuit. I did a variety of business, a telecommunications company, a real estate development company, an engineering firm. And of course, the vertical diet has now performed incredibly well internationally. And so it's just whatever I get involved in, I just pursue it obsessively. And I make checklists every morning. When at breakfast, I have a yellow pad of paper and I write my daily to-do list on it. And I might say this, I'll backtrack a little bit with respect to sleep. One of the things that's been proven to be very effective that Dr. Matthew Walker talks about, that I do and I've spoken about before, in the evening right before bed, I have that same yellow piece of paper on my end table, on my nightstand. And I do what's called a worry journal, is what Dr. Matthew Walker refers to it as. And I write down some of the things that might be bothering me or some of the things that I might be preoccupied with. It could be things that I need to remember to do in the morning and those kinds of things. And that way I can offload them from my brain so I don't sit there and obsess about them while I'm trying to get to sleep or wake up at 2 a.m. And then I got to, worry about forgetting again. So I use that same piece of paper in the morning, and it's not all to-do stuff. Some of it is stuff that I really, don't have any control over, but I write it down because I want to be able to specify what's stressing me out. And at least if I can identify it, then I can compartmentalize it and just see it there. And, if it's not something I have any control over, at least I can cross it off and say, okay, I know what's bothering me. But in the morning, I have the same yellow piece of paper, and I sit down at breakfast and I kind of map out my day with a little to-do list. And there's a specific reason why I do this on a yellow pad of paper. I call it a junk drawer whenever you put stuff on your notepad in your iPhone. And then as soon as the iPhone closes, there's really no sense of urgency. It's just too easy to get away from it during the day. And the same thing would be true in your kitchen. All that crap that you shove in that one drawer and close it and swear you're going to clean up someday. That thing lives for decades, and it just accumulates until you can't close the drawer anymore before you bother to throw a bunch of shit away. But I do have a calendar, obviously, that I put my appointments on. But my daily to-do list, I'm old-fashioned. I still have it on a yellow pad of paper. And my tracking list for my sleep and my walks and my vitamin D and stuff like that, that's on a piece of paper too. That usually sits in my bedroom or my walk-in closet. And so I can make those little X's and cross things off every day. And then if I'm not performing the way I want to, or if I just don't feel kind of the way I should, I can glance at that and tell right away what the problem is. And it's almost always that I'm not fulfilling my responsibilities or disciplines consistently.
I want to go back to one thing you said that was really powerful is you talk about the worry journal. I talk about that, just a different term with my clients. It's the throwaway journal. And I talk to them about putting those things on paper. And it's instead of saying it to somebody else, or like you said, thinking about it at 2 a.m. But you also said something about that yellow pad and the yellow piece of paper that really, really stood out to me in regards to something you put in your phone in the notes section. And so many people today are fixated on faster, quicker, better. But to your point, you put something in the notes section, or you tell yourself you're going to email yourself. You put it there, and it goes to that section that, if you're not thinking about it, if you're not opening up your notes section, just kind of, think about it later, maybe set it and forget it. But there's real power in putting things down on paper, and it's also the visual perspective. So I'm really glad you touched on that. So I don't know this answer, and I'm curious. How did you get the nickname Rhino?
Oh, I was training with Flex Wheeler back in 2008. He's a Hall of Fame retired IFBB Pro bodybuilder, one of the best in history. And I've always sought out great coaches. When I wanted to get better at something, I tried to find the best coach. I think everybody should have a coach. I still seek out coaches. I hire people. I mentioned Dr. Stasha Gomenak. I had her help me a few years ago with my sleep. Even though it wasn't that bad, I thought, well, maybe I can optimize it. Here's somebody that knows as much about this as anybody. But I went to Flex Wheeler. I actually packed up a couple of bags and I flew down to San Jose. I was living in Seattle at the time. And I lived in an extended stay for almost 3 months, right across from the gym. And I just ate, slept, and trained. And Flex came and worked me out twice a day. And at the end of that 3 months, I entered the nationals and won my IFBB Pro card. It was the best I'd ever looked and the best I'd ever performed, the hardest I'd ever worked, the more disciplined and consistent I'd ever been. But I had to put myself in that environment because at the time I was living quite comfortably in a really nice house on a lake with a boat. And, it's just hard to take yourself someplace. I think that Damon John calls it The Power of Broke, his book that he wrote. I'm partners with Damon. I was on Shark Tank with my cooler, and we partnered on that project together. And so I've followed Damon a lot since then. And that was an interesting, read, The Power of Broke. And I always felt like I had to put myself in a position to where I could do what was necessary to be done to get the job done. And after that, I packed up my bags and I went from San Jose over to Sacramento, California. And I spent 2 months training with Mark Bell at a super training gym, which is known as the strongest gym in the West. It was a powerlifting gym. Mark Bell is famously, his brother and him made the movie Bigger, Stronger, Faster. And they have the magazine, Power Magazine. He has the product Slingshot. And he's actually turned his little cottage industry into a thriving multi-million-dollar business along the way. And I trained with him for 2 months doing the same thing, living in extended stay, going to the gym and powerlifting every day. And at the end of that 2 months, I set an all-time world record in powerlifting as well. So I'm all for diving into to pouring yourself into something, the caveat being that you have to pay yourself first and take care of yourself. But I've always believed that you can be great at anything, but you can't be great at everything. And so I had to stay focused on one thing at a time. I'm easy to get distracted. I usually have a lot of irons and a lot of fires. And after a while, I got to rein myself in and kind of prioritize those. And in order to be successful, I really think you have to be pretty obsessive about one or two key things. And the rest of them, you're just going to have to wait till later, or they're going to be a distraction.
No, it's awesome. And I have to just touch on the work you've done. For our listeners who don't know about Stan, he has deadlifted over 800 pounds in competition, squatted over 800 pounds, and benched over 600 pounds. So for any of you who do not know the significance of that, just do a little research. I think it's unbelievable. If you're okay with it, we're going to switch over to what I call our hot seat questions. And the only request we have for you is you spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
You have one last meal. You can pick absolutely anything. What do you pick?
It's pizza. It's definitely pizza.
Favorite smell?
Oh, my wife. She's amazing.
Favorite sport?
I like bodybuilding.
Do you have an all-time favorite team?
Dallas Cowboys. I grew up on them. I still love them.
Favorite movie?
I like Bigger, Stronger, Faster. It had a big impact on me.
What is the favorite app you use on your phone?
I think of one I use every day. I gotta say my notepad, but that's not really an app. I actually built my entire vertical diet on the notepad. It's turned into a multi-million-dollar international business. Isn't that crazy?
That counts then. What is the background picture on your phone?
It's my daughter. Oh, wow.
Do you have an all-time favorite book?
Boy, I don't know. I have so many nutrition books. I'd be hard spent to pick one. I guess I would say it's Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. It's oh goodness, why is the name of the author escaping me right now? It's Weston A. Price.
And then do you have a favorite quote?
Yeah, I like compliance is the science. It's my quote. I trademarked it.
No, that's the best way to do it, is give your own. So for our listeners, Stan, that want to follow you and find out more about you, also your books and your product, what's the best way for them to do so?
Stan Efferding. My website is stanefferding.com. My Instagram is @StanEfferding, and my YouTube is Stan Efferding. I have a lot of rants on there that I spend a considerable amount of time and energy that I would encourage folks to watch. A lot of free content. My entire vertical diet is on the internet for free. If you just Google Iceland and Stan Efferding, it's a 2.5-hour seminar that's got over 6 million views now. I don't need to pimp my ebook to you. It's on my website if you need it. It's over 200 pages with more than 200 references to peer-reviewed published research, articles and videos, and it covers everything we discussed, from sleep to hydration, nutrition, digestion, blood testing, blood pressure, blood sugar. All of those things are in there. So that's where you find me, Stan Efferding.
Awesome. And then before I ask you my last question, I selfishly want to just get your quick response to cold therapy. And is it something that you do yourself and something you believe in?
It depends. I wouldn't do it immediately following a workout. It blunts the hypertrophy response. The same thing would be true of anti-inflammatories and things like that, or even metformin. It tends to interfere with the necessary acute inflammation that triggers all of the hormonal cascade that helps you repair from workouts. Aside from that, I encourage people to use any type of therapy, what I call a passive therapy, that makes them feel better so they can have a better workout. And that could be massage, it could be ice, cryotherapy, it could be one of those roto guns, anything like that. But at the same time, I would caution that for an actual measurable physiological benefit, I've said that things that are done to you or for you are never as effective as things you do for yourself. And so some of those passive therapies may make you feel better, but things like taking 3 10-minute walks a day, or improving your sleep, or eating better, those things are monumentally more important than any of the passive therapies, or all of them combined, in my opinion.
And then last question I have for you is the same question I have for everybody, is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
Boy, I think we talked a lot about a lot of it. I would like folks to pay themselves first, right back to my video, Stress for Success. If they would just get a little more sleep and just move a little more throughout the day. We've actually seen where 3 10-minute walks a day is better than 1 30-minute bout of exercise at the end of the day, both in terms of all-cause mortality and general health, blood pressure, blood sugar, all of those things. And so I just encourage people to get up and move around more throughout the day, and consistently pay themselves first. And then everything is better. And I just also must say that, I guess Fred Dreyer said one time, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I just encourage folks to try and stay positive, and not be so hard on themselves all the time. It's hard in this era of social media not to compare yourselves to everyone else, and just try and do better than you did yesterday. And, to throw out another quote from Jordan Peterson, is to say that design the day you want. I'm really careful not to overwhelm myself with my obligations, and I try and include some things in my day that actually matter to me and that put me first, and that because it tends to get too easy to do what everybody else wants you to do, or what you're obliged to do, and just run yourself into the dirt. So I know that's a lot of stuff, but I just encourage everybody to just enjoy the journey and stop looking at everything as a finish line. That would include their diets. It should be a lifestyle and something they enjoy, which is what I try to design with the vertical diet, and not egg whites and tilapia and broccoli. Nobody's going to do that for any extended period of time, and not 40 minutes of cardio on a treadmill every evening. Not only is that not terribly effective, but it's not sustainable or enjoyable. So I just take the 10-minute walks. I like to lift weights, but the best exercise is the one you'll do. Just pick something you enjoy. It doesn't matter what it is. But nutrition is 99% of weight loss, and just eat foods that you enjoy, but don't eat too much of them. And it's really that simple.
I love it. I think that's great advice, and I truly appreciate you spending some time being on the podcast, and I hope that you and I can connect again soon.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you for listening to episode number 293. Stan shared some incredibly useful things with us today. From the importance of sleep, walking, and even our salt intake, I know that I learned a ton on today's episode. Stan said one thing that really stood out to me: repeat successful behavior because consistency wins. During the very difficult climate we are currently dealing with in our country, Stan's parting words were spot on. Stay positive and don't be so hard on yourself. So my challenge to you today is just that. Stay positive, and no matter what your day brings, don't be hard on yourself. And remember, we rise by lifting others up.
And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.